Hey there, my name is Ryan. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to play the game Azul, a fairly simple but extremely fun game to 2 to 4 players. You'll learn everything you need to know how to set the game up and play it, and of course if you find the video helpful, hitting that like button down below really helps the channel out. To set up, give each player one of these player boards and use the color side here. Now place the black score marker on the 0 space up here. Place the first player tile in the center of the playing area, then place the remaining 100 colored tiles into this bag. These tiles can be black, red, yellow, light blue, and dark blue. And just so you know, for gameplay purposes, light blue and dark blue are completely different. Now grab out these circular factory boards and place them in a ring around the first player marker. In a 2-player game, you'll use 5 of them. In a 3-player game, there will be 7. In a 4-player game, there will be 9. Since we're going to be showing a 2-player game today, we have 5 set up. You will then reach into this bag which contains the 100 colored tokens and pull out 4 random tiles. You'll place these 4 random tiles onto one of the factories. Now go ahead and do the same for the remaining 4 factories. I find it helpful to reach into the bag and pull out exactly 4 tiles and fill one factory at a time. This is because a player should not be allowed to decide how to group the colors in any way at all. The tiles must be completely random and placed out here. Now we have our 5 factories set up, each containing 4 random tiles. Now the player who most recently visited Portugal goes first, or just decide it randomly. There are 2 major parts to the game Azul: picking tiles from those factories you just set up, then also placing them onto your player board. We're going to begin with the factories, then we'll get to the boards here in a minute. Now on a player's turn, they can select from any factory. When you select tiles, you must pick up all of one color from the factory you choose. For example, if a player chooses to take the red from this factory, they have to take these 2 reds. If they wanted only 1 red, they should select this 1 red here. Now if a player selected these 2 reds, it would actually immediately place them onto their player board, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But also when a player selects the tiles from a factory, all the remaining tiles on that factory are then pushed to the center of the board, right here by this Go First token. Now the next player's turn, they can pick tiles from these factories just like the first player did, but they also can select from the middle. Let's say they choose to take this light blue tile here, which will push the remaining 3 yellows to the center. Now we're back to our first player, and let's say they grab these 4 yellows out of the middle. Now the first player to take from the middle, first of all, has to take all of one color. Just like normal, you can't take 1 yellow, you have to take all the yellows. But also, since this is the first player to take from the middle, they also will take this first player token. This first player token will immediately go to what's called the floor, into this -1 spot. We'll talk more about that later. Now play will go back and forth with players selecting tiles from the factory, or if there are some available from the center. Remembering that if you ever want to take a color, you have to take all of the color that's present. So in this case, let's take these 2 blacks here. And then if you take from a factory, all the remaining tiles in that factory always get pushed to the middle. So let's say these 2 reds are selected. This black and blue go to the middle. Now a player here can grab these 2 blacks out of the middle. The next player takes this 1 black and pushes these to the middle. Now players will keep taking turns like this until all the tiles are selected from the center. Now quick note, you must select on your turn even if you don't want to. So there's a chance that you don't want to take these last 4 blues, but if it's your turn and it's the only move available, you must at least select something. Now let's take a break from the center and see how you're going to place these tiles on your player board. Each time a player acquires tiles from the center, they must immediately place it into this left area on your player board. They'll place them into one of these rows, which contain 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 slots. So you'll be doing this every single time you pick up tiles from the factory, immediately placing them into one of these rows. And when you do place them, you put them as far to the right as you possibly can, so as close as you can to this colored area. So let's say in their first turn, a player does select these 2 red ones, and they choose to put them into this 4th row. Now notice that they're not forced to fill this up. Right now there are 2 tiles here, but they haven't completed the row yet. Later on, let's say a player selects this yellow token here. Now it can go into any of the rows except this 4th row here. You cannot have a row with 2 different colors on it. It has to be all of one color in a row. So let's say this yellow tile goes right here. Later on, let's say they select 2 more reds and they place them into this 4th row with the reds they already have. Now that red is a complete row, which will matter here at the end of the round. Now as the board fills up, you're going to notice there are fewer and fewer available spaces. For example, this blue can go here. It can't go there. It could go here. It can't go here because, well, it's already filled, but also you can't mix colors there. And it can go on the bottom. Also, when you place, you cannot split up your placement. So if you drew all 3 of these at once, you can't put 1 up there and then 2 onto the bottom. All of them have to go into 1 row at a time. Now that actually brings us to one more really important part of this phase, the floor line down here at the bottom. Whenever you cannot or do not want to place tiles in this area up here, the unused tiles fall to the floor. The tiles on the floor will then give you negative points at the end of the round. Let's say, for example, a player drew these 4 black tiles on their turn. Now, the only 2 available spots for them are this and this. And let's say they put them into here. Now, 3 of them fit, but 1 does not fit because only 3 go into this 3rd row, so that extra tile would fall to the floor. Another example would be at the end of the round, you're forced to take some tiles. So in this example, let's say you're forced to take these 3 yellows. They can't fit in any of these 4 rows because they're all completed. There's 1 available spot here, which you could think, well, I'll put 1 there and these 2 fall to the floor, but you can't, because remember, you can't mix colors. You can't have yellow and blue in the same row, so all 3 of these yellows would go to the floor. One more situation here, let's say you drew these 2 light blues, and you simply don't want to place them here. You're always allowed to drop things down to the floor line if you don't want to place them. Now let's say your floor line is completely filled up and you have 3 more pieces to go down there. Any excess pieces that don't fit are simply returned to the box. Those returned to the box won't count against you into the round, but the ones out here will count -1, -1, this one's -2, 2, 2, and 3, and 3. Note it's a cumulative, it's not -3 total. This tile is -3, that one's -3, so it really adds up as you get more and more down there. Remember that the first player to choose from the middle also gets this first player token, and it goes in the first spot in the floor line. So this player is going to go first the next round, but they get -1 point for doing that. Now after all the tiles have been taken to these factories and placed into the player boards in this left spot here, we're going to move them over to the right spot and do the final phase, which is scoring. The way you score is you start from the top here, and all completed rows move 1 and only 1 tile over to their matching spot. So for example, this is a completed row, so this 1 black tile will go to the black spot here. This is also a completed row, so this yellow will go to this yellow spot right here. Now this row has an extra, and if there's ever an extra, just return the extra to the box. The blue and the red are also complete, so both of them would move a tile over, return the remainder to the box. The black tile here is not complete, so this would actually stay on your board until the next round. But we also need to score, so let's reset this and talk about scoring. Whenever you move a tile over, it immediately scores. So for example, this tile right here is not touching any of the tiles, it would give you 1 point. But if you move a tile over and it's touching pieces that are already established, it scores for all the pieces it touches, like this. If this tile moves over, it forms part of a vertical line. Since there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces in that line, it would actually score 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. The same is true if you move a piece over and it makes a horizontal line. In this example, 1, 2, 3, 4, you would score 4 points for that. Now where things get really interesting is if you move a piece over and it's part of a vertical and a horizontal line, you get to count the piece for its place in both lines. So for example, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 points in this line, but also 1, 2, 3 points for the vertical line. So this is a total of 7. 4 points this way and 3 points this way. And just to note, if you had this situation, since this blue tile is not part of either the vertical or the horizontal lines, it wouldn't affect scoring. This would still be worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, for a total of 7. Also, just to be clear, if you move this blue one over here, it's part of the 1, 2, 3, 3 long vertical line, but it's not part of this horizontal line. So this move here would be worth 3 points. Now you do this phase of moving the pieces over and scoring, you always start from the top completed row and work your way down. This matters for scoring because in this example, the red would move over, it's not touching anything, so it's worth 1 point. Then this yellow would move over, and it's not touching this red, so that yellow is worth 1, 2 points. Finally, we move this blue over, and it's now in a 1, 2, 3 long row. 1, 2, 3. So let's walk through one example of scoring phase at the end of the first round. First, this black would move here, worth 1 point. Next, this yellow would move over to this yellow, the X will return to the box, worth 1 point. This blue row is not complete, it's missing that third piece here, so it's just going to stay on the board until the next round. This red is complete, so we'll move this over, it's worth 1 point since it's not touching anything, and these 3 will be returned to the box. This light blue is also not complete, so it's going to stay here. Unfortunately for this player, they have a negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. So we're going to count the score back 6 times, 1, 2, 3, and actually you can't go below 0, so we'll just leave the score marker right there. Since this player has the first player marker, they'll put this in the center of the table, and then all of the tiles from the floor line will be returned to the box. Now don't be too concerned about the score at 0 right now. The first round often ends with pretty low scores. Now to set the second round, you're simply going to put this go first token in the middle. The player who had it will go first in this next round. And just like the first round, you're going to reach into the bag and take out 4 tiles and put 4 on each of the 5 factories. Now make sure you take these tiles from the bag and not from the box. The box is going to be containing the extra tiles that were thrown away from the player's boards when they scored and also from their floor line. However, if you ever reach into the bag and all the tiles are gone, you will then at that point take all the tiles from the box, put them back in the bag and reshuffle. Now the second round ready to start with all the exact same rules. Players take turns selecting tiles. Extra is going to the middle. First person take from the middle also takes the first player token. Except we have one new important rule for the second round. Like I mentioned earlier, tiles from incomplete rows stay on the player's board. This is nice because it makes these rows a little easier to complete the next round. So let's say this player selects these 2 yellow, and here's where the new rule comes into play. Of course, they can't put these yellows here or here because that would be mismatching colors, but also they are not allowed to put yellows in this row. The reason they can't go here is because yellow is already completed for this round. There's already a yellow tile sitting here. So actually, as the game goes along, more and more spots will be blocked off. The yellows can't go here. They could go here, X1 going to the floor, or they could go here. So as the game progresses and you have more and more tiles over on this side to score, you also have fewer and fewer places to place those tiles. You could have this situation where the only tile that can go in that spot is the dark blue because every other tile is taken. And that leads us to a very important point. How do we actually end the game? Rather than having a set number of rounds, Azul ends when one player has a complete horizontal row over in the colored area. So for example, this player places blue here, had these here, and this here. Now at this point, all the players would know that when this piece is slid over into this spot, it signals the end of the game. But the game doesn't end right away. All players have a chance to slide pieces over, score for their rows, complete all the pieces that are incompleted rows over here, for example, that one and this one here. And then at the very end of all players being able to move the pieces over and scoring, then the game ends. So the game will last a minimum of 5 rounds. It takes 5 rounds to place pieces here and move them over. But there's a chance that no one does this right away. It's possible for the game to go on for 6 or 7 rounds. Hypothetically more, but I've never seen it happen. Also note that only a horizontal row ends the game, not a vertical row. So after a horizontal row is made, players continuing moving all their pieces over for that round, completely finish that round, and then go on the endgame scoring. Endgame scoring is pretty simple and it applies to all players, not just the player who entered the game. It says here that each completed horizontal row scores you 2 points at the end of the game. So in final scoring, this player would pick up 1, 2, 3, 4 more points. It also says that each completed vertical row is worth 7 points, since that's hard to do. And then if a player has all 5 of a single color, they actually get 10 bonus points. So in this example, all 5 yellow spaces are filled, so this player would go from 74 points to 84 points. At this point, the game is over and the player with the highest score wins. If there's a tie, the tiebreaker goes to the player with the most completed horizontal rows. Alright, that should be everything you need to know to start playing. Now, of course, if you have any questions at all, ask in the comments down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you found the video helpful or just enjoyable to watch, hit that subscribe button. You'll see some more how to plays like this, some board game playthroughs, and also some reviews.